We're continuing in the photographic validation of America's electric Nazca, megalithic Marfa, Texas. This is a book I wrote on the discovery of the importance of the solstice and equinox lines around the world as they connect all megalithic sites. And the equinox line here from Stonehenge itself actually connects with the Giza Great Pyramid and then into the New World through Newfoundland, the heart of America, and to a little place called Marfa, Texas. It also connects with Mexico City and Baja Peninsula too. I believe this is the path that they followed to get from the Old World to the New World. They revered solstice and equinox paths. And this is the Marfa area. Notice that Marfa, the cities of Marfa, Alpine, and there's the Plateau, and Fort Davis suggest an equilateral triangle. In this part, we're going to be flying over what I consider to be the apex of the reason this place has remained hidden. And this is the flight path I took. I stayed in Alpine, and we are just about right there. And that is the Alta Vista Airport, or what used to be the Marfa Air Corps Airport. Now you'll notice a little airplane symbol in the middle of the screen. That is to confuse people. I filed Freedom of Information Acts to make sure I was correct in my assessment. There are at least 4 kinds of lines found on the Marfa Plateau. The dark lines, embedded in the soil, some are used as fence line markers, vast majority are not. I think they are connectors and timers. Road type lines all have the same width, cut through quartz deposits, apparently without explosives or detritus or residue. And that would be the brighter areas, which are quartz deposits. Then we get to the scratch lines. The scratch type lines, they can be easily dismissed except in some of the geoglyphs present on the plateau and around. They are integral, and I'm sorry about the spelling, in the geoglyphs themselves. And the raised lines are easily the most interesting because they suggest something is under the soil pushing it up, and that's how it looks from ground level. Just miles and miles of straight line. This is a Freedom of Information Act that I've filled out in regards to the Alta Vista Airport. Now the Alta Vista Airport, I believe, is the central piece in this hidden history, and they must have thought it was a Star of David. They were apparently afraid to do much to the area too, so they just put an airport on top of it. They didn't destroy a whole lot of lines, but they did alter some. Now this is how it looks from the air, and you'll notice that there are some sweeping portions around the edges. And talking to the USO that exists still in Marfa City, in memorial to the airport and the Air Corps, Army Air Corps that was here during World War II for 2 years, by the way. You'll notice there's a curved area here. They told me that when the Air Corps left, they opened up great ditches and just dumped in everything and covered it up. And we will be coming up along that side, which is right there. But you'll notice the lines in the distance still exist. But I think that in order to cover up a history, they must have thought that this would have possibly enticed the Nazis to bomb a Star of David because of their hatred of the Jewish people. And so they disguised it. And there's one of the areas I believe is a dump area. And you'll notice that it's a big, wide open, just fissure. It doesn't go along with anything else. And you'll see a couple of these in the area where they're just dug up holes and then obviously recovered at some point. But the lines still exist around it. And there's the city of Marfa off in the distance and the highway you take to Alpine. It's a nice little city. Very, very friendly people, and I would suggest a trip. But you can see the lines exist. Whether the airport is a mock-up or a some kind of a logo for a religious symbol, I don't know. It could be a star tetragon, it could be any number of things. But what gets me is this airport was given, all 10 acres, to the city of Marfa at some point, and only a very small section exists as the viewing center. So the rancher who is adjacent to this viewing center property has these fences all over the place, and he is prosecuting people for trespassing. So please don't think you can jump the fence and wander around in there, because you will be prosecuted. But obviously this is the Alta Vista Airport as it was given to me by Freedom of Information Act. They gave me the runway size, numbers, and their makeup. Asphalt, dirt. But it seems they went to great pains not to disturb many of the lines. They still exist, whether or not the military ran over things. This is a very, very hard, compact clay and quartz soil. And there's hardly any rainfall out here. As I told you before, this area is about 7,650 feet high. This is almost exactly the same as Machu Picchu. And there's another area that could be a dump area. So you really have to be concerned with falling into some of these pits too, from what the locals say too. But I believe they just don't want anybody snooping around. And all of that airport area that's indicated here should be City of Marfa property. But for some reason, a major rancher has fenced off areas that don't seem to belong to him. But that's only because I've read the history of the area. And you can see how many different kinds of lines are making up this area too. There are dark lines, raised lines, road lines, and scratch lines. Almost invisible scratch lines. But they are also part of this whole glyph. And some of the first things I found when I started highlighting these lines were a cross, and then I came to this area, and all I could think of is as a Star of David. And then I found a yin-yang symbol, and several crescent moons from the Muslim people. It indicates that there was possibly a time in history, a real time in history, where people of all religions worked together and not only tolerated each other and in their spirituality, but they revered them. And you can see some of the existing structured areas are still there. But the area is so huge, so massive, that they did not destroy a whole lot of it, and there you can see that the line continues even under that runway. And that's because it's an integral part of the soil itself. And there you see stapled areas. These staples indicate some kind of terraforming because they're not used for any kind of reservoir or backup water system or anything like that. They are not dams. They look, for all intents and purposes, like staples or sutures intended to keep two areas together. And you can see the dark lines. The scratch line is what is actually being held by those sutures too. You can see just how perfectly straight these lines are. Even through areas where they've obviously done some damage to them, they still exist because of the nature of the compactness of the soil. It's an amazing area when it comes down to it, and they're all attached to water functions. So water was a needed resource for this area's operation, and I believe it was all due to light up the area for navigation from the air. And I can only imagine what it must be like to come into a dark planet, or at least half in the dark, half in the sun, half in the dark, and try to navigate around the world through the dark areas without something. Now you'll see some structured areas out here that are, for all intents and purposes, pyramidal, possibly sphinx. There are so many structured areas out here that real archaeology needs to be done. Someone needs to go out and dig around the area. Now you see some waterways. I think this is all directed though. Even the vegetation on the plateau is managed. And even when the road lines are damaging, they don't remove all traces of the lines. So the lines are that deeply embedded in this area. Obvious structured areas. And you can also see lines continuing over hill and valley, straight through as if they didn't exist, or as if it were a flat plate. And they're there exactly, precisely. That's why I think this area was a very artful area too. And I flip this around a little bit so you can see there's no entrance or exit to a vast majority of these connecting sections. And they also are geoglyphs in themselves. But the bigger geoglyphs exist as the road lines and raised lines. And then there are other vaults present that obviously the army didn't do. So you have to wonder, what is there? This is obviously a rectangular structured area. And there you see many scratch lines and the sutures that hold many of these together. And I think they are simply there to keep the art in place. And this is the reason that I had to come out with the book early. They're intending to run a pipeline straight across the plateau without any regard or research being done. And these lines exist all over the area that they want to destroy. And then in their proposal, they say that they might end the Marfa lights. I think this situation is abhorrent and should not be allowed. And Texas, you should have a care for your own natural resources and uncharted, unresearched areas. This is your history. This is world history. And this is easily the largest megalithic site in North America. The lines just go straight on. And many of these are actually kind of solar functions. They look like eye retinas or something of that nature when you see them from an advanced altitude. But they are all tied to water functions. And you can get electricity from an alkaline aquifer, which I believe this is. And this also explains Nazca itself. Again, connective area, some used as a fenced-in area. Water function, some fenced, some not. The color, spectacular, but it looks tiled off, sectioned off. Straight lines that mark an artful base. And you can see that hardly any of these dark lines are actually fenced in areas, but they do use them. They're nice and straight. They exist. I can't blame whoever owns the area for using them. And lines like this go on, some for 50 miles. Some of the scratch line and road lines go for 100 miles. This rivals anything on the planet that was made during a megalithic era. And until some research is done, I will continue to say this is a megalithic area. And you can see some are used as fencing. But the angled area is not. And then there's all the scratch lines that effectively make it look like an eye's retina when viewed from altitude. Some of these have roads right beside them. Most don't. Some of the lines they actually look like they're on top of another set of lines that existed even older. And you can see the sutured area all through that ravine. Again, the water plant or whatever they want to pipe. I think they should be a little more careful and maybe follow the roads that are existing rather than destroy an area just because it's easier. And all are tied to water and we're getting back into the main part of the plateau, following a southerly route. And these curlicued areas, they're not simply for traffic or anything that, like you might think. When you view from altitude, they actually make a part of the art itself. But you can see some of the traces of lines are actually, they actually look older than some of the ones that you can easily see. But the difference between man-made and the existing road structure is obvious. Man doesn't care about straight functions or anything of that nature. They wibble wobble through the landscape, and usually there's detritus or residue on the sides, because we can't copy these existing road structures that have no history of ever being done. This is an area of minimal construction, and they're all water functions. But the lines go right through them. It's a very, very primitive area, and it would be such a treat to see these actually functioning as they're supposed to at night. As I attributed almost a full chapter to Edson Hendricks and his sighting in 1992. He says it looked like a three-ring circus, and that there was rain off in the area and thunder, but he didn't think that it had anything to do with it. And you can see this the size of the length of these lines in comparison to the city itself. It's an amazing plateau. Again, the stapled areas, and they're not attached to the reservoir, not attached to any of the arroyos that would carry water. This has been an amazing voyage. And the color really stands out. Against the quartz itself. And believe me, everything is infused with quartz. It doesn't matter if it's granite or the clay quartz mix that seems to be used as a concrete, to tell you the truth, or something that attaches rock to soil. But no one seems to be able to give any other explanation for these lines than what I have given you. This area is connected directly to the Great Pyramid, and this is how I found it, by drawing a line across the Great Pyramid over the apex of the pyramid from corner to corner, and following the line that it made all the way around the world using Google Earth. And the Google Earth line function is very, very precise. It it shows up very easily when you're wrong. And I can easily say that some of my highlighting is probably wrong, but the vast majority gives a symbolism that exists here. These are the same kind of lines found in Nazca, only like a revised Nazca. Could have been just a little younger. You can see that these are metal sutures underneath the soil. And the work had to have been an amazing, amazing task. But these connective areas, I believe, are timers too. And you can see like a mosaicked area. And these lines that are perfectly spaced. Over hill and valley, it doesn't matter. But those are not the lines that make up the geoglyphs. Those are the ones that you can easily see when you look at Google Earth. When you highlight the road lines, the raised lines, and scratch lines, it makes an amazing scene. And that tells me that everything was intended to be lit up. A virtual light show. A North American megalithic light show. And you can see the mileage. This is one of the solar patterns. Evenly spaced. You would have to organize this from the air. I don't think it could be done on the ground. And I thank you for your view. We'll see you back for part 5.